All right, let's dive into a fantastic evolution in one of Java's oldest, most fundamental pieces of code, the switch statement. As of Java 14, it got this massive upgrade that helps us write code that's cleaner, safer, and just way easier to read. To kick things off, let's just look at how dramatic the difference is between the old and the new. Just look at this. On the left, you've got the classic switch we've all been using for years, right? It's clunky, you've got break statements all over the place, and honestly, there's so much room for error. But then, look at the right. That's the modern switch expression. It does the exact same thing, but it's so much cleaner and clearer. This isn't just a small syntax change, it's a completely new way to think about conditional logic in Java. So, to really appreciate why the new way is so good, we have to understand what was so broken about the old one. For decades, I'm not kidding, the traditional switch statement has been a notorious source of really subtle and frustrating bugs for Java developers. Let's dig into the main culprit. The core issue, the thing that caused all the headaches, has a name: fall-through. In a classic switch, if you forget to put a break at the end of your case, the code doesn't stop. It just keeps on going, falling through to the next case, and the one after that, until it finally hits a break or just runs out of road. And this is where things get really messy. Imagine you've got a switch for days of the week. If the day is Monday, you want it to say weekday. But if you forget that little break statement, the code just barrels right on through into the case for Saturday, and suddenly your program is incorrectly spitting out weekend. It's a tiny typo that causes a completely wrong result. And trust me, these bugs can be a nightmare to hunt down. So, to fix this mess and a few other issues, Java introduced switch expressions. They were a preview feature back in Java 12 and then became a permanent standard part of the language in Java 14. And this, well, it changed everything. And here's the big idea, the real game changer. The old switch is a statement. It just does something. The new switch is an expression. It actually produces a value. That's a huge distinction. Because it's designed from the ground up to return a result, it's also designed to be way safer, with no fall-through behavior by default. So here's what that looks like in the real world. See how the entire switch block is on the right side of an equal sign? We're taking the result of that switch and assigning it directly to the result variable. The expression looks at the plate variable, finds the right case, and produces a single string value. It's so much more elegant and intuitive. Okay, so let's break down the new syntax and the new powers that make this approach so clean and powerful. The first thing you'll notice is the arrow. On the left, the old way needed a colon, and then you had to remember to break. On the right, the new arrow syntax does double duty. It separates the case from the result, and it automatically prevents fall-through. That break is now implicit. The arrow basically says, do this, and we're done here. Another fantastic improvement is how we can handle multiple cases. You know how you used to have to stack empty case labels on top of each other? Well, that's gone. Now you can just list multiple values separated by a comma. So in this example, if the value is 212 times or 216, the result is Istanbul. That comma acts just like a logical OR, and it's so much easier to read. But what if a single line isn't enough, right? What if you need to do a few things in a case, like log a message before you return a value? For that, Java gives us a brand new keyword, yield. You use yield specifically inside a switch expression to say, okay, this is the value this case is going to produce. And here it is in action. For case 3-4, we want to print a message first. So we open up a code block with curly braces, do our printing, and then we use yield Istanbul to officially return Istanbul as the value for the entire switch expression. Yield also stops the execution, just like the arrow does. Now, this next part is maybe the biggest deal of all. It's not just about writing cleaner code, it's about writing safer code. The Java compiler now actively helps you prevent errors before your program even runs. The concept is called exhaustiveness. Think about it. Since a switch expression has to produce a value, what happens if the input doesn't match any of your cases? Well, the compiler forces you to answer that question. It requires that you cover every single possibility, which usually means you have to include a default case. No more accidental unhandled states. The compiler's got your back. Now, there is one major exception where you can get away with not having a default case, and that's when you're switching on an enum. If you write a case for every single constant in that enum,
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all of them. The compiler is smart enough to know that you've covered 100% of the possibilities. As you can see here, if all weekdays are covered, there's nowhere else for the code to go, so no default is needed.
Now here's a really cool bonus. The folks who designed this didn't just create a new thing and abandon the old one. They actually took some of the best ideas from switch expressions and brought them back to the traditional switch statement. What this means is you can now use the yield keyword even with the old school colon syntax. And when you do that, it kind of transforms the statement into something that acts like an expression. It produces a value, and crucially, it stops the execution for that case. So fall through is no longer a problem. Check out this hybrid approach. We're using the colons like we always have, but instead of break, we're using yield to provide the return value. This gives you all the safety and value-producing goodness of an expression, but lets you keep a more traditional structure if you prefer it. It's really the best of both worlds. So, let's bring this all together. Why does this evolution of the switch statement actually matter to you in your day-to-day coding? Let's just run through the key takeaways. First, the syntax is way more readable, which makes maintaining code so much easier. Second, it completely eliminates that whole class of fall-through bugs by its very design. Third, because it produces a value, it fits perfectly with modern functional programming styles. And maybe most importantly, it leverages the compiler to make your code safer by catching errors before you even run it. It's a huge, huge win for Java developers. This new tool is powerful, it's safe, and it's elegant. It's perfect for ripping out those messy if-else-if chains or refactoring old risky switch statements. So it really begs the question, when you look at your own projects, where's the first place you're going to use this new feature to make your code better?